If you've watched this show much, this right here is going to be a pretty familiar sight. This is a high-speed PC tech station. It's an open-air test platform intended to install a computer on it with no covering whatsoever, so you get the benefits of cooling with the drawback that things can get a little bit dusty if you don't keep things clear over time. Okay, so the advantages are quick hardware swaps and cooling, and disadvantages being that, well, dust, and in this case, it's pretty ugly, pretty industrial looking. But some people want an open-air test bench style case without the ugliness and with something that looks more like a gaming system. This is the Aerocool Strike-X, or as I call it, the Big Papa open-air gaming case. On the outside of this here case, although it's hard to draw a line between the inside and the outside because check this out at the back, it's completely open. On the outside of this case, the first thing you're going to find at the front is your I/O. One USB 3 port, 3 USB 2 ports, headphone and microphone ports, as well as front power and reset switches. This might remind you a little bit of the Antec skeleton, but definitely with more of a gaming look and feel to it with the black and red color scheme. The next thing you're going to find on the outside is a full mesh top cover that lifts up a little something like that to reveal a 200mm fan that, according to Aerocool's website, is put there to keep any heat from accumulating anywhere near your motherboard or CPU. The fact that it's angled is going to allow the air flow to go sort of down towards your components. This is the CPU socket area here, and then directly out the back we've got vented PCI slots. We've got, well, a completely open side right here, so I don't think we should be too worried about any heat accumulating really much of anywhere. Next up, we've got, this is awesome, because this is kind of like those little things for your car, where it's like, here, see? There, it holds up your hood. You have the option also of installing this facing top down instead of at an angle, so that way it's blowing just generally down at the system. So that's going to provide more cooling for things like the graphics card area, as well as, well, generally more cooling for the graphics card area, as well as more of an omnidirectional flow as opposed to being aimed out the back. So that's controlled with a little thumb screw right here. On the bottom of the case, we find 6 feet. Here we go. A little something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rubber padded feet, so those are going to prevent it from slipping around in the event of any, well, slippage. We also find ventilation on the bottom of the power supply for bottom mounted fans. We've got a gap over here where all of your power supply cables can be run to what I would normally say is the back of the motherboard tray, but in this case it's also the bottom of the case, so it's very hard to say. It's very unconventional. So we've got room here to route the cables that go to the bottom of your motherboard, room here to route cables that go to your ATX-sized motherboard, your normal width motherboard. Here, we can put cables that'll go on an eATX motherboard, and up here, there's a little gap to run your 8-pin cable to the top of the motherboard. You've also got a CPU cutout, which will enable you to swap CPU coolers without actually, see, normally I'd say without taking the side panel off of the, no, swap CPU coolers without taking the motherboard off of the motherboard tray, and that pretty much does it. There we go, for the bottom of the case, which leads us to drive expansion. We can install 3 5¼ bays, and you can actually slide this whole module off just like that in order to install them, and then put the whole thing back on. There's a plastic clip that holds it in place, and we've also got down here 3 hot swappable 3.5-inch drive cages that can be pulled out and can have either 3.5-inch or 2.5-inch drives installed in them. And hopefully I can put this back without looking, because otherwise we're going to have a problem. Okay, we had a slight problem, but it's okay, we got over it. At the back, this is kind of interesting. There is a spot to slide in your power supply, and they also have plastic clips. So check this out. Little power supply holders, so to speak. So it comes with not 1, not 2, but 3 of them. So you could actually swap power supplies just by installing a plastic clip, just like this, and then swapping out a different power supply by installing a different plastic clip. It should be noted that the power supplies don't screw in except to the back of the plastic clip, so I wouldn't really recommend building a system in this and then shipping it somewhere. for example, because then you might have a bit of a problem. Here at the back, we find those vented PCI slot covers I talked about before. There are 10 of them for even the largest XL-ATX motherboards, and they use plastic thumb screws, so you don't have to use any tools to get your cards in and out. The last thing we find on the back of the case right here are water cooling grommets. So if you needed to run an external water cooler and you didn't find that there was enough space in the case otherwise to run the tubing out of it, then you could definitely run them through those holes. However, it's highly optional whether you do that or not. It should be noted that that's not, it's not the weirdest water cooling grommet holes we've ever seen. There was one case we encountered once that had one water cooling grommet hole in the back. So the idea was, I guess, that the fluid came in and never left. At least with this case, if the fluid comes in, it would be leaving because it is open, it is airflow happy, and it is the Aerocool Strike-X. Thank you for checking out this episode of NCIX Tech Tips. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this from ncix.com.